I'm just at the end of my first 2 years in policing. I had my confirmation handshake with the borough commander last week. And as I was putting on my woolen tunic on the hottest day of the year, I was trying to remember what I felt like 2 years ago. I've been thinking a lot about how we tend to surround ourselves with people who have the same outlook as us and do things the same way. It's easy to stay like this, comfortable in our own familiar worlds. For me, the last 2 years have been a lot about collisions between these different worlds, different cultures and perspectives, with each being so eye-opening that any discomfort involved is 100% worth it. I want to talk briefly about 5 examples of this. 5 times when, since joining the police, I've seen how much good it can do when different worlds open up and confront each other. Firstly, there was the world I was in 2 years ago that was suddenly confronted with the world of policing. Before I applied to Police Now, I'd never thought about joining the police. If I ever talked about policing, it was probably based on what I saw in the news. And career-wise, I was thinking of joining the civil service or something similar. Police Now gave me that extra nudge to take the leap into something completely new, giving me the chance to learn so much more than I would have learned if I'd gone into any other job. Since joining, I've met so many people with skills and qualities that I would never have even known about or noticed that I didn't have. I've been amazed by colleagues making decisions in fast time, their incredible calmness under pressure, getting the job done no matter what, and making people feel safe in the middle of the worst situations. Starting to learn these skills from them has been one of the most satisfying things I've done, and knowing that I can still learn so much more is partly why I want to stay in the police. It's not just the new skills, it's the new perspectives too. In my pre-policing world, I assumed that the police must have everything sorted. And I've been through the process of first realizing that the reality is a bit more chaotic, and then quickly learning to love that reality with all of its flexibility and space for making your own decisions, and to be proud of how well we managed to deal with the massive range of issues that we're needed for. It wasn't just me that had to get used to this different world, my friends and family did too. My family had to learn about the sides of policing that aren't shown in the media, and my Facebook newsfeed, meanwhile, suddenly stopped being a classic echo chamber of people with all the same views. When cosmetics company Lush recently ran their campaign about the undercover policing inquiry, some friends were posting in support while others were condemning it. This was a strange feeling, but definitely good for me. The last 2 years have made me a lifelong convert to trying new things, as well as a lifelong evangelist about policing. I think some of my friends outside the police are wary of discussing any career doubts with me because they know what my advice will be. Cohorts 3 and 4, you'll all have your own different versions of this, and I'm sure some of you might have been more familiar than me with this job before you joined, but there'll still be so much that's new. If you find it uncomfortable, all the more reason to be here. Policing probably needs you even more. The second time I experienced 2 cultures coming together was when all of us Police Now participants finished our training and joined our forces. There were the practical things like dealing with the rank structure after a very equal training environment. I think I might have overcompensated by saying sir or ma'am every other word just in case, with a low point being when I called the area car driver sir over the radio, not yet having learned the difference between their call sign and that of the duty inspector. But there were more cultural differences to navigate too. When I arrived in Hackney, the previous Police Now cohort had done some groundwork. They were doing a great job and people liked them. I was asked, why are you here? But it wasn't an accusation, it was more just, why do you want to be here? And this was a really big thing for me to get used to. The fact that some of my colleagues weren't always as positive about the job as I thought they would be. And I sometimes struggled to keep my positivity when I felt like I wasn't doing enough, wasn't achieving as much as I wanted to, coming up against all the politics and hierarchies and my own limitations in knowledge, experience, and confidence. But pushing through this and working out how to join up with others to solve problems for people has been so worthwhile. It's taught me things that I couldn't have learned in any other way. Meanwhile, I keep meeting people all throughout the police, doing amazing things with so much positivity. I think it takes time and effort to get one foot firmly in the policing world with all of its cultures and traditions, and one foot staking out new ground and trying to make things better. We've all got a lot to learn from our more experienced colleagues, and we can repay them well by keeping up the enthusiasm. My next example of different worlds colliding came through the work itself. My role as a ward officer in Dalston Hackney has been a lot about helping diverse communities live together peacefully, trying to make that merging of different cultures and perspectives a positive thing, as well as breaking down barriers between them and us. Dalston has gentrified massively in the last few years, and we've dealt with the whole range from people who didn't know 999 was the emergency number, but witnessed violent incidents all the time, to those who have the borough commander's direct email address and use it to report ASB. Along with my team, I've tried to be someone who can bring these perspectives closer together. Like when we helped newer residents understand that the groups of young people they were complaining about were really vulnerable people and not just criminals who needed arresting, and got them to start volunteering in the local youth club. Or when a domestic violence survivor who'd been terrified of speaking to police started to trust us and gave us the information we needed to remove the drug dealers from her home. There's always more that we can do to engage hard-to-reach communities. Personally, I know there'll always be a limit to how well I can do this, partly because I'm not from the same background as a lot of the people I'm meeting on my ward, who are mainly from BME communities. This makes me even more aware of how important it is that we keep increasing diversity in policing. I care about my role in Dalston a lot, but if someone else would be better placed to improve trust, then they need to be there. We all want to increase understanding amongst different communities and between communities and the police, which have sometimes felt worlds apart. It's not just a nice addition, it's crucial for the work we do. A while ago, I started noticing that policing had now become a familiar world to me. I'd settled into the culture and formed a new set of comfortable perspectives. I'm proud of this because there were definitely times when it didn't seem like it would ever happen, which I hope is a bit of reassurance for those of you wondering if it will always feel strange. But this new familiarity was also a problem because it meant that I was too shut off from outside influences, which leads me to my fourth example of different perspectives meeting. A few months ago, I went to the first Transform event, which brought together people from Police Now, Teach First, Think Ahead, and other schemes working on the front line. I found this really inspiring. Talking to all of these social workers and prison officers, I had a sudden realization that I'd started thinking like a cop and that this might not help me to see the bigger picture. For example, when we talked about tackling violence by young people, others spoke of the kind of social isolation and loss of sense of community that contribute to this, which our police tactics were sometimes exacerbating as we tried to disrupt offenders. I hadn't seen it this way because I've been too narrowly focused on one aim. So now, whatever I'm dealing with, I want to make sure that I'm focusing on the long-term goals, the kinds that everyone share. I'd say take any chance you get to link up like this. Conferences, shadowing, friends and contacts. It might shake you out of your way of thinking and help you solve problems that seemed unmovable. Lastly, I recently spent a month working in the Home Office and saw into the very different world of policy making. I want to stay in policing, but this didn't make me any less keen to do an external secondment because it's a great chance to see something new. Being in the Home Office, finding out how policies are developed that have a massive impact on frontline work was a really useful insight. And it made me think about the challenges of making sure that good ideas flow in both directions, up and down within the policing ranks and back and forth between police officers and policy workers. When you're working on the front line, I think it's hard not to see the policy world as so far removed from the day-to-day reality of our work. And while I was there, I did feel a bit like an imposter, putting on a suit and briefing a minister, wondering if he could tell I was secretly a police officer. But I met people there working on brilliant ideas and projects that are aiming to do such good things for policing. It's our responsibility, as well as theirs, to make sure that these bond with the reality on the ground so that they can have the best possible impact. I would massively recommend doing an external secondment, not just because of the benefits it will give you, but also you can contribute a lot by putting yourself in a position to bridge the gaps between these worlds. These moments when different perspectives come across each other can be uncomfortable, but they are so worth it. In my experience, they spark tolerance and understanding. They're where the best ideas surface, where we have to question our outlook and are reminded of what's really important. I think anyone involved in this is lucky because you learn so much and you get a broader perspective. For new officers just starting your training, get ready to join a different world and immerse yourselves in it. but keep on valuing what it is that you're bringing in with you. For those of you 1 year in, even if things get tough, don't underestimate how much you've already learned, and keep sight of why you're here. My cohort is not for me to give you any advice, so thanks so much for the last 2 years, and good luck with where you're going next. I see so much that's changing for the better because of people branching out from their familiar worlds in all kinds of different ways, and it makes me so excited to be a part of where policing is now and where it's going. Thanks.